right, welcome back to True Vine Talks. This is Rachel. We've got Linda and Caitlin here, and we're going to talk about a pretty heavy subject today. So I just kind of want to start by giving a little trigger warning that if things that you've been seeing or hearing about in the news have been really troubling to you, this might be a podcast that you want to skip for now. We're going to be talking about some of the traumatic, more violent things that the news has been sharing and how that can create a lot of stress in our lives and ways that we can try to cope with it. So if you're not feeling prepared to hear about that, feel free to skip this podcast. Right?
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. And so I think, Caitlin, you had been talking with us before we started the podcast that this has been a topic that's coming up for you a lot. And what are some concerns that you're hearing from your clients?
Yeah, of course. A lot of my clients and myself have been really heightened by the things going on in the news. There's been a lot of mass shootings, as we know, and I just want to mention too, before we go too deep, we're not talking about the polarizing nature of this issue. We're not talking about the politics or anything like that. We are focusing on how hearing all this stuff day in and day out affects our mental health and what you could do to kind of safeguard that. So that's kind of the purpose of today's podcast.
Right.
But yeah, it can be so stressful when you tune into the news and you feel like you're experiencing it with the people who have went through the different traumatic events, the shooting at the grocery store, Uvalde, all these different mass shootings. It's traumatic.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to see. It's hard to hear about. It's hard to think of the families that are immediately affected, through loss and tragedy.
It's really hard to not put yourself in the other person's place. Like I can remember after Uvalde happened, thinking about going to school and what that's like for the kids there and staff, administration, like how scary that is. So I also work for a school system as a counselor as well as with True Vine. And the atmosphere at school the next day was just so somber.
Yeah, you noticed that shift
immediately.
Wow.
I remember the first school shooting back in the 90s. It was some of my age here, Columbine. And we were just like, what? In shock and like, what's happening? Why? What? Who? For what reason? I mean, you're asking all these questions, and that was tough. That was tough to hear and see. Yeah. I don't know if that was the first school shooting or not. I have no idea, but that was scary.
Yeah.
That was the biggest one, and the one that is definitely memorable when we think back to all these horrible events that have happened. Rachel, can you remember when the Virginia Tech shooting happened?
I think for some reason, I was like very protected from the news.
Really?
Growing up. I don't know why, but because I know my parents were always watching it, but I think just for some reason I was able to like block it out.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I was, that was my senior year of high school. And I can remember being so scared to go to university after that.
Yeah. Yeah, you would be.
Yeah, I was listening to something the other day and they were talking about a survey from the American Psychological Association that they did back in 2019. And their findings came up with the results that all these events in the news affect 1/3 of people from going out and living life and doing things that they would have normally did because of that fear.
Yeah, we want to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're like realizing there's not 100% guarantee that I'm going to be safe at school or at the movie theater or at the grocery, wherever. That is terrifying. Yeah.
And how does and that's a part is like, how does your body respond when you're having a visual external threat? And it goes into
tense up. Yeah. I think, is it like watching the news? The brain isn't really able to differentiate between like, oh, I'm a safe observer versus like, I'm living this, I'm right there in the action. I think it's difficult for the brain to truly know the difference. Mm-hmm. We get like tense, our heart races, maybe hard to like breathe, sick at our stomach. Yeah, for sure.
They can't, I don't think the brain can differentiate the threat, right? Is that what it is? I think so.
Yeah.
Look me up on that sometime, because I don't think the brain, when it sees a negative event, separates it from it being a threat to self or other. I'm not sure if that's accurate. You'll have to check me out on that.
I think it's accurate. Yeah. Yeah. And so you had the polyvagal information that you wanted to share.
Oh, yeah.
Or you don't have to if you can't bring that up.
Yeah, I think you have to make me the host again. And
okay.
I don't know. It's kind of like important.
Yeah, it shows the science. Yeah. So it's kind of validating, oh, this isn't all in your head as we hear much.
Here it is. Okay. So you want to kind of walk people through what this image is? We've got it pulled up for anyone that's watching on YouTube.
Yeah. So when your body is in homeostasis, serotonin levels are good. You're feeling the dopamine levels are right levels. Your body's in what we call social engagement. You can see there, it's in the green. You're grounded, you feel present, you want to connect with others, you feel safe. And it lists there what's going on in the body, the circulation, oxytocin, you have the ability to be calm. And when do we feel these things? Well, I feel them when I'm outside. When do you guys feel socially engaged?
Yeah, when I'm outside in nature, when I'm with my, closest friends and family. Yeah.
I feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
When's that for you, Miss Katin? When do you feel most socially engaged?
Probably in a cozy atmosphere. So whether that's outside and good weather, doing something I enjoy, or in my own living room with my family around.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool. And then we go into the orange zone. This is the fight or flight when our sympathetic nervous system is being ignited. So if you're watching the news or you're on your feed on your phone and it's popping up, just think of a flashing lights, red light, and your body's like, ooh, we got to restrict. The blood is starting to restrict and you're not moving. You're just sort of like, what do I do? How do I respond? And this is where you just start feeling deactivated, and the anger shows up, all these emotions. And what do these emotions serve for the individual? What are the emotions? How do they help?
So when we pick up information from our environment, right, we're making meaning out of it in our brain. And that meaning is what kind of triggers the emotion. The emotion tells us how we need to respond to try to get back to that state of homeostasis, right? So if we're feeling anger, it's like it's because our body feels like it's experiencing a threat and we need to protect ourselves.
Yeah, and Linda, when you were describing this, I was just thinking of how I can be having a good day and then a push notification will come through on my phone. They're shooting somewhere. another act of violence somewhere in your community. And instantly it's a shift.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in like less than a second, right? As soon as you read that or see that, boom, your body responds.
Why should we unplug? There's the answer.
Yeah.
There's the answer. Yeah. And who wants to talk about freeze mode? Freeze, freeze.
I'll do it. Yeah. Yeah. So on the image, there's kind of like 3 layers. We've got the social engagement, homeostasis at the bottom in green. In the middle is this orange and red, fight or flight. At the top is this blue, freeze. And this is when we kind of clam up. We're not able to move. We're probably not even able to form sentences, to speak. You might feel numb, might feel dissociated, shut down, hopeless. We're just kind of like so scared. You're like kind of playing possum. Sometimes they describe it as, right? Or like a deer in headlights. It's just like, I don't know what to do here. Like, a lot of people say their mind will be racing when they're frozen, right? Or just like kind of scattered and all over the place. They're not able to kind of focus in on, okay, what do I need to do right now to move out of this?
Sounds very stuck.
Yes, stuck is a word that comes up a lot.
Being
Yeah.
glued to the TV and being glued to these images or not knowing what to do with this information.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's, yeah, so good insight, Caitlin and Rachel. And you know, with a veteran and with Charlie, my husband, it's like when he sees these images, he goes into preparation mode, which to me, that's probably no longer social engagement, but he's in fight or flight. Well, I got to get the food. I got to prepare for war. Something bad's going to happen. If there's shootings, we're going to war, right? That's the automatic response of a soldier, typically, not for all. I'm just talking about my experience here. And then when the negative event, or the, like what Rachel said, the environmental external stressor dissipates or no longer in visual, the freeze shows up, and you'll notice him just kind of freeze up and be sort of, I don't know, catatonic or almost, or just, it's like, well, what happened? Well, I don't have to fight anymore. So I'm just sort of freezing up, see what happens. And then he unfreezes and gets back into social engagement. So I don't know if that's true for all veterans, but that's true for our veterans here. So, and maybe that happens to folks who have been in a school where there was shootings. I think it's the same trauma response. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think trauma responses are pretty common and familiar across the various traumas. I don't know how to word that.
Yeah,
but
so
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
collective trauma response.
There we go.
Healing.
Yeah.
In order to take care of ourselves, we need to shift towards being more trauma informed. So in the way we model it for our kids, but also how we take care of ourselves.
Mhm.
That's so good, Caitlin. That's yeah. Collective response, and that that collective fear. So then we move into what you were sharing, Miss Caitlin, about was the ACEs. This is something that as school counselors, they kind of do ACEs at school. Is that what they do?
Some do. I was trained in my graduate program. We talked a lot about ACEs to know how much trauma someone may have had. I am of the mindset that everybody has some level, but ACEs kind of enlighten us whenever we're working with someone. It's a quick way to get a lot of knowledge to know how traumatized this individual may have been. And with ACEs, it's a way that we're able to just score someone very quickly. So of course it's not the whole picture, but we look at, did you have a disability growing up? Were your parents divorced? Was there drugs in your home? Were you in a car accident? Just all these different things that can be categorized as traumatic. And that kind of gives us a direction to go in as therapists and counselors. So, you know, they're calling now, like today's kids, the lockdown generation, because they have to practice lockdowns. Like that's part of their public education. Like we will practice lockdowns 3-4 times a year, active shooter drills, things like that. And it's very real. It puts it in your mind like, oh, this is something that could happen. That's why we really have to practice and take this seriously. So all this stuff in the news and all these media events and things with the shootings, I would argue affects everyone's ACEs. I would say it's traumatic for everybody because we are so connected with social media, and it does affect us each personally when we see that.
Right. I mean, it's a moment in time, even if it's not directly happening to you. Right. I mean, think about being a student in an elementary school or even middle school or high school, right? And you're doing a lockdown drill. There's no actual threat in that moment, but you can't help but think about like, oh, okay, what if this really did happen? It's a moment in time where you don't feel safe because you're uncertain. No. Yeah.
Yeah, and that stands for adverse childhood experiences. So Caitlin and Rachel, they were as school counselors, they have had a lot more training and education around ACEs. That's something new for my generation where trauma is, I don't know. I think we've had more trauma since your generation, even though I'm early 40s, but still, it seems like there's been more traumatic events in the last 20 years than previous. You guys think that's accurate? I don't know, historically speaking, if that's true. I don't know.
It's definitely in the media more now than ever.
Yeah, I can remember when 9/11 happened. I think I was in 6th grade, and everyone just stopped what they were doing and we just watched it on TV at school.
Yep, I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was extremely traumatic because you really thought we were at war.
Yeah.
I did. I thought we were going to war. Yeah. And so when we get inundated with all this, can you guys hear me okay? I'm trying to
Yeah. Crystal clear. Yeah.
Echoing. Okay. For our listeners, when we're getting inundated with all this red alert and you're in fight or flight, how important is it to remove self and regain homeostasis for your mental health? How important is that?
It's extremely important. Yeah, go ahead, Caitlin. What were you going to say?
I love that you mentioned like the science behind it. And we discussed like the feelings that come up and where you feel it in your body, because that information is so important. That's your clue. Oh, this isn't serving me, or something's wrong here.
Yeah. Do you guys, here's one thing that I run into, because like the number one recommended way to try to help cope is to take a media break, like distance yourself from seeing and hearing about these traumatic events. But I have a lot of people struggling with anxiety and they feel like they can't stop. Like they feel like the only way that they'll feel better is to be prepared, and they can't be prepared if they don't know.
Right.
Do you guys run into that?
I'm one of those.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
I like to know what's happening in the world, but one thing I've found that has helped me has been to limit it. I'll tell myself, okay, I'm going to listen to this for about 15 minutes. And after that 15 minutes, I've got the highlights, and then I'm going to turn this off and try to soothe myself for a minute.
Okay, I like that. So it's limiting, like you're not saying none at all,
Right.
but you're giving yourself a window of say 15 minutes where you let yourself get the highlights, the cliff notes, so to speak, and then kind of moving on with your day. That's great. Yeah.
Cliff notes. I love that. Hey, that's so good. That's so good. And when I was growing up, my grandma would sit and watch the news 24/7, and she would be biting her nails and worrying about every event in the world. And I'm like, I don't think this is the way. I don't think I'll do this when I'm older. I think I'll just disengage from the news, because remember, the neuroscience says humans are bent towards negativity already. We remember negative events. We also look for negative things, because before, during the caveman times, we were fearful we'd lose our life. So we're always looking for things that could kill us.
Mm-hmm.
That's what several neuroscientists say. So if you sit and watch that, something's going to kill you, something's going to kill you, something's going to hurt you, something's going to, I mean, yes, those threats are real and can happen, but what are you telling your brain?
Mm-hmm.
The threat is immediate, and yeah, we're either going into fight or flight or freeze. Yeah.
Good, Rachel, that's it. It's immediate. When in fact, it's not typically immediate, unless, you know, it could happen, but you're telling your brain it's going to happen.
It's happening right now. Yeah.
It's happening right now.
For the person that internalizes that 1/3 in that study I mentioned earlier, they are sitting at home not living maybe as they normally would have chosen to do. And coming out of this pandemic time, or even we're still in it, I guess, with the lockdown, you know, we had a pause on normal life for so long that if you choose to do that for yourself, I guess, I feel like that's really hard on your mental health.
Mm.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's all right. Go ahead, Linda.
Well, the news media talked like there were going to be body bags laying on the side of the street. I don't know if you guys remember that, but pre-lockdown, I thought, this is it, man. This is the play. I don't know. Everybody get in the house and hover, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we thought. That's what that was what, I mean, I guess they didn't know what COVID was going to do and how bad it was going to get, but I feel like sometimes media banks on our brain feeding into the external negativity. I think, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I was assuming the worst.
Yeah.
You know, we have a tendency to do that. Yeah. Yeah. And when we've talked in previous podcasts about highly sensitive people, and I think it's even harder for the folks that, you know, that fit the highly sensitive person to consume really violent, you know, we talked about it, they don't want to watch the violent, gory movies because, right? Or for me, I can't watch the boxing match. I'm like, my face hurts. But right. So yeah, it's so hard to see that because we feel it like physically more than just the stomach churning. It's like we feel the heartache of the parent that lost a child. We feel all of it. It drains our empathy reserve.
Yeah.
Yes. For
it
the
makes
HSP,
yeah. Yeah. And can make it harder for you to be there for people that are in your, you know, your family, your friends, your colleagues, people that you want to be there for.
Yeah, so what can we do to combat those external stimuli that freezes us or puts us into fight or flight? And Caitlin brought up a great way, just limit it. And Rachel said cliff notes. So you got to refuel and re-energize your soul and your vessel. And what are some other ways we might move out of the external stimuli that causes this fight or flight? What are some other things we might suggest our listeners to do?
Moving your body, going on a walk, whatever form of movement you like, be that playing a sport, yoga, running, weightlifting, right? Movement is so good for that fight flight thing, because it kind of like can trick your brain and body into thinking that you did like defend yourself or run away, right? It can get you back to homeostasis.
It puts out those feel good chemicals.
Yes, that too.
And that cheers us up, makes us happier, helps fight some of that brain fog. So maybe we won't feel as confused or stuck after we do some movement.
Yes.
Very good. Brain fog. That's so true. You get into a fog, like the COVID fog and the lockdown fog and the, war fog and,
all the fogs. I like that. All those fogs. Yes.
So, so our listeners, we want you to be in the green zone where you're feeling joy, wanting to connect, feeling motivated, being curious about the world, like Rachel traveling to Peru and seeing these beautiful places. We want you to move into social engagement and movement. Like Caitlin said, unplugging, prayer, yoga, meditation, go to a counselor.
Yes.
Talk about your anxiety, name it, which Rachel has taught me through Dan Siegel's work. Name it to tame it. Mm-hmm. Oh, this is scary. Every time I turn on the news, I feel like I'm gonna, something bad's gonna happen. So, having someone to share that with, and then also doing all the mindfulness, and I think that's good. What else do you guys want to share prior to us departing today for our podcast?
Therapy is so valuable. Just, we're therapists, so of course we're going to say that, but it is. Yeah. In therapy, you gain this whole toolbox of coping skills that you can pull out. So, you may not feel like movement that day, but maybe one of us teaches you how to do guided imagery, and you sit there and you go into the state of mindfulness and you just calm yourself. Or maybe we teach you how to talk to yourself kindly and be kind to your inner child. Maybe your inner child needs you to just tell them that it's okay. And maybe your own child's watching you and seeing how you, like Linda, watched her grandmother. So they're seeing how you handle this stuff and how you cope with it. Mm-hmm. It's super important.
Well stated. And Caitlin and Rachel have such soft spoken voices, so they're great therapists, and their voice alone will soothe you. So if you, seriously, Thanks. If you have a need and you want a great therapist, Caitlin and Rachel, they're awesome. And Caitlin's still accepting new clients. I don't know if Rachel is.
I think I'm booked.
She's booked right now. See, when you're that good, this is what happens.
Caitlin will be booked soon, so hurry and get your appointment. Yeah.
Thank you, girls.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you joining us for True Vine. Any other thoughts or comments before we head out for our day?
Yeah, I guess just as always, trying to normalize that, the increase in stress, anxiety, fear, sadness that you might be feeling, whatever it is very normal. It's a chaotic time. It's a scary time. and we're all just trying to find ways to feel safe. Right. And so, whatever that looks like for you, feeling safe, if it's asking for more hugs than usual, that's been me recently. If it's just finding a quiet, dark place to like lay and listen to some calming music, you figure out what that is for you, right? How can you feel safe when there's chaos happening in the world?
Right. My goal for all my clients is always to help them learn how to be happy. That's one goal that I have for all my clients. Like, I want you to learn how to be happy. And the reason why we thought this was an important subject is because all the stuff in the media and all the things on in the world can really steal your joy.
Yeah.
Well stated, both of you. We appreciate all of our listeners and sharing our podcast. It's free to you, and we just appreciate the opportunity to talk about mental health and how we like to help you. So thank you for joining us today.
Until next time. Bye.
Bye.